and families. Purple Star schools also participate in at least one supportive activity each year. A few facts being the fifth year. The class of 2022, which Dublin-Scioto High School was a member of, was the largest in the history of Ohio's program. 263 schools, there were 94 first-timers applied and 169 renewals, for a total in Ohio of 431 schools that are the designated Purple Star. With Ohio leading the way, because we were the first in the union to have such a program, there are now 40 states within the United States that have a Purple Star or Purple Star-like program. New Jersey was just approved this month, and the other state up north was number 40 approved this month. So please honor with a round of applause Principal Scott, Mr. Witt, sorry, and Ms. Camary. So it is an honor. Can you all hear me all right without the mic? So it's an honor to provide each a certificate. Ms. Bonnie. And Mr. Witt. Thank you, sir. So I'd like to invite Principal Scott to come up and talk a little about the program that they have at Dublin-Scioto. Thanks.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. Thank you for this award. Thank you for running this program, and more importantly, thank you for your service to our country. And that's where it all starts and ends. It was 8 years ago. John Witt came with an idea about a Veterans Day program that has morphed into what I think is probably the finest Veterans Day program in the state of Ohio, and probably rivals a lot of that in the nation. If you have not come by our Veterans Day program, it is after school in November, and it is the most inspiring thing that you'll ever see. And that's led to a military signing of much that was driven by Bonnie Gameri to make sure that we really celebrated those that chose the path of the military. And then when Dr. Marshausen came, he had done this before in Hilliard with one of the Hilliard schools, and he got an email, and he knew that we had a lot of this going on in the school, so he sent it to me and said, would this be something you'd be interested in? And it was you didn't even have to think. And I forwarded it to two people, and they're right here. And they have just been amazing with all year building this whole application, and it takes a full year to do it, and it's all been John and Bonnie driven. They are amazing. They care so much about our military families, and that's really what it is making sure that we have military families that are appreciated. And it culminated after we received the award with a military appreciation dinner that these two put together to honor those Scioto graduates who would come back, and we had a dinner, and we've got signage that we put up in our main hallway that has a list of all of our graduates who were on there. And I was just telling Bonnie, the best part of the whole evening was not the wonderful meal, was not the wonderful presentations and celebrations. It was each one of the people that were there coming back up and going, oh, wait, this person's not on there, and this person's not on there, and oh, this kid graduated, and he's not on there. And the number of names that we got that night that will now go up on our board. And we hope that will continue to grow. And thank you, Keyburn, for all that you've done for signage that will go to the school. And it ended with an honor flight, which took place last Thursday, that these three and Tanya went, and it was just, they said it was the most amazing thing that they've ever been a part of. So this is huge for our building, and thank you, Dr. Marshausen, for just taking that and sending it to us. because it's all led to this, and thank you so much for your coming out tonight and honoring us. So thank you all very much.
For our next presentation tonight, I'd like to welcome up Mr. Joe Blind from Dublin Jerome High School to recognize some of our stellar student athletes.
Thank you. Very honored to be here tonight as your athletic director at Dublin Jerome High School. I have the honor of introducing our boys lacrosse team tonight. This year they were very close to repeating as state champions, just fell a little bit short, and last year they did win as state champions, and we were in the same place here last year. So I'd like to introduce our head coach. He's done an amazing job with our young men, and he has a wonderful staff, and look forward to hearing him talk. Mr. Andy Asmo.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for all of you for allowing us to be here to honor our team. It was obviously a little disappointing, but I think it's good to learn, and the journey that we took after we were here last year actually with you guys as a team and came together and, you know, ended the year 19-3, but what these young men learned and how they brought not only each other together, but I think the whole community in Dublin to support us was amazing to see, and just the great community that we have here in Dublin City Schools and just in Dublin in general is something to be very proud of, and I'm very proud of each individual. With me today is Coach, my offense coordinator, John Ewert, as well, who's a big part of our program. So at this time, I'll go ahead and announce our players that are here today. Thank you for having us. Reese Klein. Kellen Deach. Ethan Fett. Kale Hawk. Derek Hull. Xander Johnson, Jack Penny, Luke Penny, Davis Pfizer, Mason Rice, Michael Smith, Chase Sagurnis, Kyle White, Brady White, and Dane Walensky. We should probably go too. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'd also like to thank the board for our strength and conditioning coach, which was new this year to Dublin Jerome and all three high schools. Dublin Jerome was able to win the All Sports Award for the 5th year in a row, and a big part of it was the strength and conditioning program we have, and Mike Lawless, our new coach, is a big part of that. So I'd like to thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to invite Mr. Mike Ulring to the podium. For the board's purposes, the resolution that Mr. Ulring will be talking about will be potentially acted on during the superintendent report.
Good evening, Dr. Marshausen, Board of Education, Mr. Kern, thank you for allowing me to present today. I'm here to present a recommendation for Dublin City Schools to add boys and girls bowling to our athletic programs as an official Ohio High School sanctioned sport. I have the privilege to work on lead the athletic council, which is part of the board policy to have an athletic council. Mr. Valentine and Mrs. Rigby have attended those meetings, and through that council, it came to us that it was recommended to us through all the proper policy and all the following board policy that bowling be recommended to be an official sport. It's been a club in Dublin off and on, and very strong at Scioto High School for the last 3 years. We had healthy discussion in our meetings, and we unanimously wanted to recommend this to Dr. Marshausen, who asked me to speak tonight and present this proposal to you, as you will be looking at this later in the meeting to potentially vote for. This is a winter sport, so we have time to put this together. It's well established at Scioto right now. It is not currently at Kaufman and Jerome, but both principals and athletic directors believe this is something that will take off as an opportunity for the students. So why bowling? Bowling is the only Ohio High School Athletic Association's sanctioned sport that we currently do not offer in Dublin City Schools. We offer all of the ones that are sanctioned and others. There are 416 boys teams, 378 girls teams currently in the state of Ohio. This puts them, these sports, bowling now is larger than tennis, field hockey, lacrosse, ice hockey, gymnastics, and swimming and diving. So it is a growing sport in the state of Ohio. Another reason is the OCC, Ohio Capital Conference, which we belong to. All 3 high schools belong to this conference. Currently, 25 of the 32 teams have bowling, and we do not. As well, it's relatively low cost. There's not a lot of equipment. Kids get their own equipment. And we're essentially paying for some coaches and transportation, which is minimal as well. As well, it can lead to scholarship money for some schools, for students if they get into it enough. And this is a non-contact competitive sport that we can allow kids to participate in as well, and a lifetime activity for a lot of people. So I think there are a lot of pluses to this, and at this time, I'm going to open up to any questions that anyone might have or any comments from Mr. Valentine or Mrs. Rigby regarding that.
Just one question. What would the home lane be, the one on Sawmill?
My understanding is Sawmill Lanes.
Okay, and then how about the radius? How far are they going to travel to?
OCC, pretty much the
Okay.
OCC. Maybe there'll be a tournament somewhere once a year, right, that they would go to. But right now, it's local. It's very local at this point.
Would this be just at Scioto, or would we have like one Dublin team, or
We have 3.
3? Okay.
So our goal would be to have a varsity and a JV at each school. And we've done this with hockey, where we may not have enough at one school to start. Maybe we just have a JV team for the first year until we build that program. But very confident Scioto will continue to grow, and they're going to lead the way right now with a varsity and a JV. But the other 2 high school principals and athletic directors believe when we offer this, they're going to have a lot of kids who want to participate. So that's something we'll have to wait and see. But if we don't have enough kids, we'll figure out a way. We've done it before in other sports to come up with a solution to where the kids who do want to participate can participate. It may not be a full team to start out for a school, but we're hopeful it will be. Any other questions?
Would there be one coach per high school?
There would be a varsity coach and a JV coach if we have enough players to do both. So there would be, and you can see the levels of pay that potentially would be on there. And in the picture of athletics and what we do for athletics, again, it's a relatively low-cost item.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and for all of the ADs for their work on the athletic committee and the recommendations as we continue to look for ways to get better. We appreciate all the time that you and the ADs and principals put into that, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. All right, for public participation for action items on the agenda, there are 3 people signed up. Ms. Spear is the first one signed up. And just as a reminder, you come up, please state your name, and that the public participation will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker.
Good evening. My name is Colleen Spear. I'm from Dublin, Ohio. This is my sidekick, my son Isaac, who is a rising second grader at Bailey Elementary. And with my husband Brian, we are the parents of 4 young children in the district. I'm speaking tonight as a concerned mother experiencing the effects of our district's balanced literacy approach. Recently, I took an intensive course on the basics of reading instruction and wanted to share a few of my biggest takeaways. Here's what I discovered. Reading is not a natural, easy, or automatic process. The science of reading is not a fad or a pendulum shift. It spans hundreds of studies on how the brain learns to read. Over and over, research has proven that learners who receive systematic, explicit teaching in foundational skills become better readers. I'm here this evening to advocate for an ELA curriculum rooted in scientifically based structured literacy. Structured literacy is not a new concept. If you are my age or older, most likely it's the way you learn to read. Balanced literacy, which is used by Dublin, is a different approach which encourages using imagery and context clues, embedded word study, and the implementation of using leveled or predictable books. Dublin's balanced literacy approach was especially disastrous for Isaac 2 years ago. For example, if he got stuck reading a leveled book, he was instructed to look at the first letter, then look at the picture to figure out what word would make sense. Sometimes this meant that rink was roller skate or book was bag because he was guessing based on the picture. When I'd show him a sight word, such as purple, he would say pink because he remembered that it was a color and started with the p sound. Without any decoding skills, he wasn't using the letters to sound out words. They were just squiggles on a page. As the year went on, he got much better at guessing, but his reading skills didn't improve. We were both frustrated and confused, and so I started to educate myself. What I found was shocking. Simply put, the balanced literacy model does not work, and our kids are paying the price. The phonics programs recently proposed are just one part of the formula for building successful readers. They should not be considered in isolation. To be clear, phonics instruction is essential, but not sufficient for building a reading curriculum. To implement a phonics component, no matter how efficient it is on its own, without looking at the block as a whole, is akin to slapping a Band-Aid on a transplant patient. It is simply not enough. While all readers can benefit from structured literacy, for those with dyslexia or other specific learning disabilities, or English as a second language learner, it is an absolute necessity. I applaud the board for taking this first step in revising the ELA block, but I urge you not to select a phonics program in isolation. If you review the materials presented by the 95% group, you will see that even they clearly advocate for a structured literacy approach and reference the science of reading. Please do not just put a Band-Aid on this issue. The time is long overdue for our district to implement a comprehensive, structured literacy curriculum, as many other local districts have already done. Now is the time to demonstrate what the Dublin difference means by adopting proven science of reading methodologies across the ELA block. I urge you to reconsider how reading is taught in the Dublin City schools, now before more students are left behind. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you for the comments. Next up is Ms. Hollerman.
Hello, my name is Sarah, and I'm a member of the Dublin Dyslexia Parent Network. We sent you a letter today, and I would like to share a story about my daughter to eliminate one request that was mentioned in the letter, the request to shift to content-based literacy. When our daughter was in first grade, my husband reviewed a homework assignment with her. She was asked to read the book, What Sounds Say, and write the following on a graphic organizer. 3 things I learned, 2 interesting facts, 1 question I have. Following is the text from the book. What do sounds say? Some sounds say, something is here, a train is here. Some sounds say, are you there? Answer the phone. Some sounds say, I'll stop here. But it repeated in that fashion. After talking with our daughter, my husband was concerned because she could not independently read the text that she was brought home. It contained words with phonics patterns that she had not been taught and therefore could not decode. What do sounds say is an example of a leveled, predictable reader that has a repeating pattern in pictures that my daughter was supposed to use along with context and other cues to solve unknown words that she encountered. The premise with leveled readers is that students learn to read words by exposure to them rather than through explicit, systematic, and cumulative teaching of the code. Our daughter did not learn how to read by applying cues to leveled, predictable texts. She became a skilled reader after she transitioned to structured literacy and accessed decodable text that she could read by applying the skills that she had been taught in each lesson, text that only included words with phonics patterns and high-frequency words that she had been explicitly taught. And the reason I'm sharing this story tonight is that the proposed plan includes structured literacy, 95 phonics, and our group is so incredibly pleased about that decision. However, this is only one component of the block, and to reach 95 proficiency, the team at 95% group recommends that students read decodable text in small group literacy that align to the lessons taught in the 95 core structured literacy block. We haven't seen meeting notes or documents that indicate that this shift is also going to happen. So we see an opportunity to pause and further develop the plans before their launch with our next group of learners this coming school year. And finally, I'd like to just circle back to the assignment that I discussed at the very beginning, to find 3 things, 2 interesting facts, and a new question from a text. We're also asking Dublin to make a shift to content area literacy. And what that will involve is engaging students in complex, high-quality texts, informational texts and literature that connect to compelling topics of study, often framed around science and social studies topic. They can access these through content-rich read-alouds, content-rich decodable text, or authentic literature. In a content area block, students build knowledge about the world, which supports comprehension, helps them develop a love of reading. They collaborate, they build shared knowledge necessary to create beautiful, authentic pieces of writing about topics of study. And they have meaning, a reason to read, write, listen, and speak about content.
Okay, Ms. Hallerman, your time is up. Could you please wrap up?
Thank you. So what we are encouraging you to do is to, instead of trapping students in leveled interventions, let's develop their knowledge of the world, their reading skills, and their love of reading. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your comments. And finally, we have Ms. Seward.
Evening. Don't start yet because mine's 4:30, so just pause for just a little bit while I start. Evening, my name is Tara Seward, and I have 4 children in the district. I'll be talking tonight specifically about my now 7th grader's journey before and after he was formally diagnosed with dyslexia in 3rd grade. It was immediately apparent to me as early as kindergarten that my son didn't have the love of reading that I was taught just magically comes with being exposed to more and more books that you love. In fact, that proved to be the furthest thing from the truth. I did the bedtime stories. We still do the read-alouds, the audiobooks, and library visits. However, when Braden would come home from school and I'd ask him to open his reading folder with carefully selected books at his level, he would burst into tears and break down at the mere prospect of having to read. I would beg, barter, bribe, and ultimately get frustrated myself because I didn't understand what I could possibly be doing wrong because my son didn't just not love reading, he despised reading. When he finally sat down and read with me, it'd take 10 to 15 minutes to just get through a sentence in a picture book. He'd be looking everywhere for help. He'd start by sounding out the word for the word forest, and then look at the picture and say fox. I'd say, no, look at the word Braden. He'd try the beginning sound again, look up in the air as if searching for the word and say fire, fall, tree. He was just guessing and hoping for the best. I realized then that I didn't have the tools to help, but I didn't know what to do because his teacher was saying he was on the right track and just being lazy. I knew that wasn't Braden. He loved to learn new things, and I'd seen him make great strides with his speech pathologist just a year prior to the point where he no longer qualified for services. He would focus on tongue placement, looking at the person's mouth, repeating words over and over until he got it right. I knew Braden was far from lazy, but I just didn't understand what the issue was. He started reading support and recovery first through third grade, but we weren't seeing any changes or improvement at school or at home. Braden would pick picture books with barely any words. Comics, Diary of a Wimpy Kid was his favorite. Anything he could do to read as little as possible. Finally, I went to the third grade teacher and said, he can barely write a sentence and he hates school. Something's got to give. It was determined he qualified for additional educational services, and shockingly, after 2 years of consistent reading recovery and support, Braden was below average. I'm talking in the 16th, 14th, 10th, and 7th percentile in phonological processing. I don't need a formal education background to know that reading recovery did not work for my son. As a mother, I felt I had failed him. After implementing our IEP, we began to see immediate improvements as Braden began using a structured literacy program focused on encoding and decoding. Within 1 year after switching from balanced literacy to structured literacy, Braden's read aloud skills went from 16th percentile to the 51st percentile. In 2 years in silent reading skills, he went from the 8th percentile to the 68th percentile. The most dramatic change was working with Mike Myers, who used structured literacy approach called Orton-Gillingham, which is a direct, explicit, multisensory, structured, and prescriptive way to teach literacy when reading, writing, and spelling. Braden's reading and writing confidence skyrocketed. He actually said to me one day, "I'm a good reader," only 1 year after crying every single day and begging me not to send him to school. Orton-Gillingham focuses on the science of reading and the evidence that shows that a structured literacy approach works for all kids, while the balanced literacy only works for some. In other words, if we use a balanced literacy approach like graded course of study, we will not reach all of our students and are doing them a disservice, which is why district after district, including Columbus City Schools in the state of Ohio, along with many other states, have abandoned the balanced literacy approach and implemented a structured literacy program with a focus on the science of reading.
Ms. Seward, your time is up. Could you please wrap up your comments?
Yes, almost done. Our children are falling behind as a direct result of these literacy programs, and Dublin should be leading in the way in terms of early literacy. Word Study 95 Phonics is a great step in the right direction, and I thank you and our students, thank you. But let's remember that this is only Tier 1, which is incomplete without Tier 2 and Tier 3. More urgently, we need to do away with programs that are proven to be harmful to our students. Success
Please
breeds,
wrap up your comments.
yes, success breeds motivation, and that in turn creates a love for reading and writing. Every one of our kids deserves a success story. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Okay, next up we have Board of Education committees and updates.
I assume we're going to talk about the policies later so we can, I mean, we did meet on June 2nd or June 3rd, I think, June 2nd. Yeah. But I assume we're going to talk about those later, so we'll just get to that. Also, DEF has a meeting tonight, and obviously I'm not there.
All right, other committees? 2 weeks ago now, trying to calculate time, it's flown by. We had our final BAC meeting of the year, and we'd like to recognize Paige Vornbrock as the BAC chair for the last several years and a longtime BAC member. So we would like to thank, I know Paige is not here tonight, but we did recognize him at the meeting, and we all thanked him from a BAC standpoint for his years of dedication to the schools. He could have chose many places to donate his time, and we were fortunate to have him at our leadership for the BAC for many years, and his network throughout Dublin and his experience throughout Dublin was very much appreciated from the schools and the BAC members. So we'd like to thank Paige.
And Paige, for a period of time, also served as Dublin's representative to Toll's Career Center, as the board's representative there, and just somebody who, all those who know Paige, respect him as a connector of people and someone who absolutely loves Dublin and our community. And it's been great, just during my time with him, to have the opportunity to work with him.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or updates? Okay, then we'll turn it back over to Dr. Marshausen for superintendent comments.
I would like to welcome up our student special visitors to the podium. These young people addressed us at our community coffee, and our student representatives to the board, all 4 of them happen to be out of town tonight. So when I suggested that we work with through the students who are on the board committee. They weren't able to be here, but we said we could invite them to the podium and turn it over to them. So take it away.
Good evening. My name is Bushra AlHiri. I'm a rising sophomore at Dublin Kaufman. I'm a Muslim who celebrates Eid. There are two Eid holidays that Muslims celebrate. They follow the lunar calendar. Eid al-Fitr is a day that marks the end of Ramadan, the holy month of fasting, prayer, and reflection. Eid al-Adha, the bigger Eid, occurs a few months after Eid al-Fitr, and it is when Muslims celebrate the pilgrimage. On Eid, Muslims perform a prayer at the mosque and celebrate with family and friends. I'm here today to propose an amendment to the calendar so that Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha are recognized and taken as days off for future years. As a teenage Muslim American, it is sometimes difficult to feel a sense of belonging and recognition in a community, but it doesn't always have to be that way. Celebrating Eid is a right, one that all Muslim students should have, without the difficulty of missing school or making up tests and quizzes. Students shouldn't have to choose between celebrating one of the biggest Muslim holidays of the year and going to school. I mean, imagine you wake up Christmas morning excited to open your gifts and spend time with your family that you haven't seen in years, but instead you have to put on your backpack and go to school. Some students skip school to attend their prayer and celebrate the holiday, but as soon as they wake up to begin their celebration, they're already dreading and stressing over the homework and tests and quizzes that they'll have to make up. I was one of those students. Teachers rarely give out work over winter break when most Christian students are celebrating Christmas. Instead, they say things like, "Everyone enjoy your break with no homework," but you almost never find teachers planning ahead to make sure there aren't any tests or homework given out on Eid. Something the Dublin District can do to address this issue is not only having no school on Eid, but giving Muslim students respect during Ramadan and Eid as well, like avoiding scheduling important events on our religious holiday, or maybe a teacher asking us, "How was your Eid?" Or an elementary school teacher reading a book aloud to the class about Ramadan and how to respect students who are fasting. Even teachers can read a short article on how they can support students during Ramadan. Little steps like these can go a long way. I actually have a list of resources that I can share that include more about teaching Muslim American students. Around the U.S., there are over 70 districts that recognize Eid as a day off, and we're asking you to do the same. Actually, me and my friends have already begun the process at the Hilliard School District. We have spoken at 2 board meetings and had a meeting with the superintendent. We also have an article written by Kevin Corvo at the Columbus Dispatch. Today at Hilliard, the board is proposing an amendment to the calendar for the next 4 years to have Eid as a holiday off. Over the past 3 months, we have collected over 1,100 signatures from Dublin students, teachers, parents, and residents for a petition to have the Dublin City School District recognize the 2 Muslim holidays, Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, as days off in the school calendar. I have the signatures with me and can share the digital copies. I also have a list of the districts in the U.S. that have Eid off. We're asking you to take action, to become one of the first districts in Ohio to have Eid off. Imagine the impacts of this. You would no longer have Muslims missing school, getting anxiety from being behind in class, and increasing mental stress while struggling to catch up. You could initiate this great wave of inclusion, acceptance, cultural diversity, and change. We are kindly asking you to give the students of Dublin City Schools the day off on Eid. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'd like to introduce myself as well. My name is Minna, and I'm a rising senior at Dublin Sayada High School. Bushra did a great job of explaining how it feels to be a fellow Muslim in the community and the basics of Eid. Following that, I would like to discuss the significance of the grand celebration. First off, this year I began to see firsthand the adversity us Muslim students face in the schools. This past Eid, I had spoken with my teachers regarding my absence the day of Eid, and one of my teachers proceeded with the conversation by saying if I can, I should try to look at the agenda for the day I missed, so I can be caught up the following day. Now, I know he had my best interests at heart. However, this took me in awe because the moment I realized, not only did I have an AP exam the day of Eid, missing morning prayer with my family, which is already a crucial part to celebrating the end of Ramadan, but I was expected to be caught up in my schoolwork as well. The day I returned, only one teacher had asked me how my Eid celebration went. As a student among many other students who desperately seek to feel heard, I am sure that this is a common feeling. Minority groups are largely underrepresented, and this has become too normalized. In such a diverse student body, especially Dublin City Schools, which prides itself in such a wide range of students, I believe that it is time to advocate for that change necessary to make all its students feel loved, included, and important. The severity of the after effects also play a huge role in the lives of Muslim students. Feeling degraded or not treated as equal when other holidays are more paid attention to, or even foreplayed as more significant than another. Actions like getting 2 weeks off for Christmas break, or coincidentally getting a week off Easter and even Good Friday, make it seem as such. We kindly are asking for 2 days off to give Muslim students the equal chance and opportunity for everyone's fair share of recognition in their community. Eid al-Fitr is a special day for Muslim students who mark the end of Ramadan. Ramadan is where we go a month of fasting and celebrate giving back to charity or the unfortunate. It teaches us the meaning of discipline and empathy for others, and kindness. Eid al-Adha is also celebrated by Muslims around the world as a major holiday, wearing your best clothes, going to the mosque for the morning prayer, celebrating and exchanging gifts, and having the opportunity to see family that you haven't seen in a year or so. Dublin City Schools calendar recognizes numerous holidays within the school year, and we would like to propose that the student body and the Dublin district get these 2 days off to celebrate a significant holiday to us as other students are able to do the same. More schools in the United States are starting to recognize the religious and cultural impact on the Muslim holiday Eid. New York City announced in 2015 that it would close its public schools in observance of Islam's 2 most sacred holidays, and became the first big city in the school district to do so. The impact it would have on Dublin's grand Muslim population would undoubtedly be appreciated. Additionally, in recent years, more school districts began to close, such as Burlington School District in Vermont in 2010, and the Irvington School District in New Jersey in 2003, and Detroit as well, which began to close its public schools for Eid holidays in 2019. This milestone will give Muslim students the opportunity to celebrate without the additional stress of exams, makeup tests, or quizzes, and homework, as well as feeling equal among their peers. Although I hear and absolutely recognize the difficulty to change the calendar and add another day off, I also believe that this is a huge milestone needed in order to make our students feel heard. I beg for your cooperation and please just to listen to us, and hopefully that we can get this achieved. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you both very much. As we look forward to upcoming Superintendent Coffees, there will be a coffee on the 23rd, which is next Thursday at the Dublin Library from 9:30 to 11. And then we have secured the coffee events for the fall, beginning in August here at Emerald Campus, and we will alternate between the evening coffees and the morning coffees. One of the things that came out of the last coffee event was, I believe, even some of our folks who have been very active in communicating with the board were complimentary of the conversations that we had at the last coffee, found that an opportunity to be productive. We were able to have discussions. So I would propose that we continue with those coffees into the fall as we get back together and gear up for school following a month off in July. Any comments from the board? I know that several of you were able to be at the last coffee.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there was a lot of positive feedback from our last coffee, and I want to give a little shout out to Ms. Schwanke, because you did an amazing job answering everyone's questions and explaining things in the way that people just grasp, so thank you.
As Mrs. De Silva mentioned, there are several policies. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are 5 of them that I would like to highlight. And then if Mr. Valentine or Mrs. De Silva wants to add anything, please feel free. One of them is 2240, our controversial issues policy. We would add to the controversial issues policy that something can't be a controversial issue if it's decided by case law or if it's in the board-approved curriculum. I know there are some things that people have very strong feelings about, but for us to debate them at the board level when it's law is kind of counterproductive. So adding that and cleaning up some other minor language in 2240. And 3213, supervision of students. Want to clarify that only licensed employees and counselors should counsel, assess, diagnose, or treat students for a number of different either social or health issues. We would encourage teachers to be active listeners, and then after listening to our students, to get them with the appropriate personnel in our schools. We are blessed, and this board has been incredibly supportive, as over the past several years, we have quadrupled the number of counselors. We have counselors in every elementary. We have multiple counselors in our high schools. And we have the support now to do a better job. Do we have enough? Absolutely not. One of the conversations we have with our university partners is they need to get more counselors out of the education process. But it's something that we feel strongly that we put teachers in a bad position if we ask them to handle conversations and issues that they're not trained for. We also clean up some of our social media language. It doesn't need to say MySpace. There are only some of us who are old enough to know what MySpace is. So we take out the specific terms because there are also emerging new social media networks that we can't possibly just keep adding them. So we say social media. We also have in there the caveat that unless it's approved by your administrator. For example, a lot of our ADs and coaches use the Remind program. It's a social app that allows them to communicate with their players and parents, but it is captured. So anything that's on there, everybody can see, you can get access to. What we don't want to do is put teachers and students in a bad position where there's personal conversation that's going on that may not be able to be monitored and continued. So those are the two main cleanup places there. Policy 5223, release time for religious instruction, is a new policy. On the board doc site, we also put the law. So whether we make this a policy or not, it's the law. And this policy is a recommendation to be adopted as new. This doesn't apply to any single religious instruction. This could apply to any religion that wanted to follow the process as outlined in the policy and outlined in the law for religious instruction during the school day, release time, and so forth. 8450.01 is facial coverings.
Can we go back to that one
Sure,
for a moment?
of course.
Because I know there are questions about that one. During our policy committee meeting, I had a question about high schoolers. If high schoolers were to participate in this, how would they do that? How would they work out their schedule, since they don't necessarily have a core curriculum, like they do in elementary school? And you mentioned that they would work that out in their schedule ahead of time, possibly schedule in a study hall to accommodate for this. And then I do have a question about elementary school students. So if they are not missing core curriculum, are they missing specials then?
They could be missing related arts. It could be arranged during the lunch recess time. So it would have to be building to building as we worked with the organization that was arranging for the transportation, the instruction, and the release time.
And so they could do it during recess time, or they could do it during related arts?
Yes.
If they do it during related arts, how do they make that up? Are they responsible for making that up?
They don't. It's a parent decision, just like this would be the equivalent of you coming in and signing out your child and then signing your child back in. And you would be putting either a daily schedule or a weekly schedule when you would choose to do that. So as a parent, it would be your choice whether you wanted your child missing related arts, if that's how it happened to work out in the schedule.
Okay, thanks.
Just one follow-up question. For the programs that I read about, it's a one time a week session. Is that your understanding? It's not every day.
It depends on the district. Some of the programs are daily. A lot of the districts, and this started in Van Wert, and a lot of those smaller one-stoplight towns, the schools next to the church or across the street from the church, And in some places, they've made arrangements, so that's where the kids go get lunch, and they eat lunch and get the religious instruction, and then they come back. In talking with the superintendent at New Albany and the superintendent at Upper Arlington, this is being done in those school districts. Transportation provided, they've had no issues at all, and they find the time during the school day. I don't know if UA or New Albany are daily or if it's just once a week.
I guess if this has been a law since 2014, like why now are we looking at this? And if it is a law, I guess I'm just thinking about the days off thing, and how we have kids doing AP tests on a day that they're missing for a religious holiday, but yet we're making time for them to leave the classroom. It doesn't really add up for me.
All right, so the AP thing has nothing to do with the Dublin City Schools. The College Board sets the dates when AP tests are given, and if we don't give the test on the day that College Board says, this is the day for AP Gov, that's the day you got to give AP Gov. So we don't set the dates for the AP tests. This has largely been, and I don't know of any high schools where this has taken place. It's largely an elementary program that we have in that policy that it's during non-core instructional time. Why would we have to put a law into policy? We have many laws that we put into Dublin policy for clarification. The courts have ruled multiple times that parents are able to take their students out of school for religious instruction during the school day. By putting a policy in place, we put the parameters that it's during non-instructional time. It would allow us to put the parameters for the practice for signing out, for returning in, to get the waivers from mom and dad as drawn up by the attorneys so that we can make sure that we're covering all of our liability bases. So while the courts have said parents can take their children out of school for religious instruction during the school day, it's up to us how to implement that case law and to put the different safeguards in place for students, for families, for teachers, and from a liability perspective so that we can make sure we have all of those bases covered.
And then is there a program that we're already working with? Like you mentioned just like, oh, if the church is across the street or whatever, but that's not really our case in a lot of situations.
LifeWise is an organization that is working in Upper Arlington, working in New Albany. We have been approached by LifeWise as a potential site for a LifeWise Academy. So rather than waiting to see, we're being proactive to make sure that we have our ducks in a row and we have our policy in place so that when we are approached, we're able to have everything in place before we get there.
And then I'm assuming LifeWise is Christian. So would we then seek out every religion?
No, we don't seek out any religion.
Well, but if
So
we engage with them, right?
If someone from Noor Islamic Center came to us and said, we have a program that we would like to present to Muslim students during the school day, it's the same parameters. If someone from the synagogue came to us and wanted to pull together a program that would allow our Jewish students to receive instruction during the school day, this same policy applies equally. So we didn't seek out anyone for this. Folks contacted us and are going to many of the local area school districts with this ask, and it is a program that is in dozens of districts across Ohio at this point. Any other questions? Okay, facial coverings. The best time to adopt a policy is when we're not in the heat of conversations about the policy. When we look, and you can see all the red lines in the policy that were that was adopted, that we worked through during the past school year. And to be honest, we didn't do them all. We had lots of conversations about opt-outs, processes, and so forth. So in working with legal counsel, the facial covering policy edits and recommendations are something hopefully we never have to look at. Hopefully it's something we don't have to struggle through again, but it does make it a little bit simpler, and it does make it so that there's more flexibility for you as a board and for us as a district, depending on what it is that we're dealing with at the time. And then finally, the public complaints policy. We've had lots of conversations about this. The current policy, which had been in place for quite some time and had never been used, as we started to work our way through that policy, it was evident that there were some things that were going to be cumbersome and that there are some things that had specific timelines that could become problematic. So the streamlining of the process allows a committee to be put in place, and then for me as superintendent to add people to the committee as needed depending on the complaint. It also pushes the committee and the concern first to the building level. If a parent has a concern about a book or a curriculum resource that is being used in his or her child's classroom, it allows and it directs the parent to first have a conversation with that teacher. Most of the time, when we have conversations and we're able to work through this at the teacher level, we're able to get those things resolved. Ultimately, it could still end up with the 5 of you as a board, but it allows me to put a committee together that is specific to that concern, and we can work through the process there. So those are the changes to the public complaint policy. You have, and the community has on board docs, an opportunity to see the proposals as well as the red line version for any of the changes that are being recommended by the policy committee to the full board.
This isn't in the policy, but could you speak to it just a little bit? So when the 5 days is no longer in there, but this complaints will be reviewed monthly.
Yeah, so rather than 5 days from when a complaint comes, this allows a committee to be formed that if there are any complaints, will meet monthly to hear and review any complaints that come to us. Under the previous policy, if we got a complaint every 3 or 4 days, we would have to have a committee meet every 5 or 6 days. And the number of administrators who are sitting to do that, it's not a really good use of our time and resources. Not that we don't like engaging parents, but to form a committee once a week, the team has jobs that they're doing. So this would have a committee that would have a scheduled monthly meeting, and the core committee would have that time blocked on a monthly basis. And if there are no concerns that come to the committee, they have some time. If there are concerns, that's when they would review all of those concerns that would come to them at that time.
Thank you.
And as far as the makeup of the committee, what do you anticipate the makeup to be? And would that be consistent then for the whole year and change the following year?
I think the core committee would be consistent. There would be, like, let's say that the deputy superintendent is going to be my designee on that committee. Or maybe it's the director of curriculum who's the chair of that committee. There will be some core members of that committee. Then depending on the concern or complaint, you may want a guidance counselor. You may want a librarian. You may want 2 elementary principals. You may want an expert from Nationwide Children's Hospital. So depending on the nature of the concern, it would allow for that committee to have additional members named for specific issues and concerns. You know, Mrs. Rigby, I won't beat around the bush. If we have concerns about when we should be talking about gender identity for elementary age students, we're probably going to get folks from Nationwide Children's Hospital. We're probably going to get some counselors. We're probably going to ask for an experienced elementary principal to be on that committee to hear those concerns so that we make sure that we have age-appropriate developmental experts at the table to make sure that we have folks who have experience working with our children in our community at the table. So you're going to want to, I'm going to want to make sure that there are different expertise and viewpoints represented at the table when we review the concerns. Okay, now hot button issues. A couple things that, and anticipating and knowing what the students were going to present to us today, I would like to propose that we take the recommendations from the students and discuss those at our next policy committee meeting. I have received several emails from representatives from our synagogue asking us to consider also taking off Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So as we look at how do we as a diverse community meet the needs of all of our students and take a look at this, right now my recommendation would be to Mr. Valentine and Mrs. De Silva that we look at this at a policy committee level at our next policy committee meeting. So I wanted the young ladies who spoke to know that that's where this will go next, and that I'm sure you will stay in touch with me and I will stay in touch with you. Christy and I met with Planning Next today. They are meeting at the end of June with representatives from the 5 committees that board members are all represented on when we talk about senior citizens, student advisory, key communicators, and so forth. They've got 5 groups that they're meeting with. They're also, when we talk today about the survey, that would be community-wide, sent to every parent and community member. That would be early fall, so talking end of August, beginning of September. Grab people while they are thinking about school and get back to it, but not when they get too crazy busy. And I'm pleased to recommend that in the HR section of our agenda today, I will be asking that the board approve Mrs. Christy Venny as the interim director of community engagement as she steps into that role. She has demonstrated over the last year in working with us in our BAC and working with us in the strategic planning process to have great communication skills, be able to work with our community business leaders, and look forward to her being an active participant in our leadership team in that new role. School safety on Thursday.
Can I interrupt you just once?
Of course.
I have one question. If we have, the 5 of us, the board members, if we have ideas before our next fall meeting, should we send them to you and Planning Next, or?
How about I will send an email to Jamie and Logan with the 5 of you on it, saying if you have things that you would like to share, set up a time that you could call them to talk with them about your ideas. Because it would be great if, I know sometimes in email things get lost in translation. They are Zoom kings, so they would be happy to meet with you, talk with you, and that way you could clarify and hopefully do it that way. So, does that work?
Yes, thank you.
Joint Safety Committee met last Thursday. Chuck Collier and I co-chair the Joint Safety Committee. It has law enforcement from, I think we had 3 or 4 Dublin police officers. We had Union County Sheriff, representatives from Delaware, representatives from the fire districts. And this is the group that we listen to when it comes to the safety plans that we put together for our schools. They do risk assessments for us. They help us plan our in-service days. They oversee, obviously, the 8 school resource officers that are in our schools. There was an article in the Dispatch this week. I think we have more school resource officers than any school district in Central Ohio. And our partnership with the Dublin Police is unparalleled. Through those conversations, we had talk about how much do we share with the public. You know, my general response is we don't share our safety plans. And there are reasons we don't share our safety plans. And it's one of those things under Ohio Revised Code that is protected from public records requests. And there are reasons for that. But Chief and I also understand that in times with such heightened anxiety and fear, that we have to do a better job communicating what we are doing that we can share. Our pat answer can't always be, you don't get to know. And I think sometimes I'm too fast with that pat answer. So the chief and I will be meeting during the summer to talk about what can we share with moms and dads that increase your confidence in what we're doing as a school district. I can tell you that we are constantly evolving and changing, and we have made or are making significant changes from May to August in some of the things that we do in our buildings. We can share that we are in the process of planning our full-scale drill operations that we will do on Election Day in November, which is specifically a day that we don't have students in school because we have so many community members in school voting in our buildings. But it's a day that we train our teachers. And this is the year under Ohio law that we will do full-scale exercises in our schools. Now, we know exercises have proven to, not everybody follows the exercises when you're in that crisis time. But we also know the more we practice, the better we get. And the chief is working with us on planning those days. Today, the governor signed into law a bill that gives school districts the option to allow teachers to carry firearms. And I think some of the way the media covered it is unfair, because it doesn't just allow teachers to carry firearms. The school districts have the option to go through a bunch of processes if they want teachers to be armed. Our Joint Safety Committee, and I asked them point blank, and it was unanimous, every law enforcement jurisdiction that serves the Dublin City School Districts feels our students are safer if our teachers do not have guns. And in a place like, in a place like Dublin, and I've been superintendent in rural districts where we don't have the resources, the response time, and let's face it, in Dublin, we would get support from 4 jurisdictions in a heartbeat, and they're all going in, and our police are crystal clear. The only person they want when they go into the buildings having guns are law enforcement. Because if someone else has one and it's not law enforcement, they're the target when they go in. So we have plans. We are blessed with an incredible police department. We are blessed with amazing teachers who we want teaching our kiddos. And we will continue to take every reasonable step to make sure that we listen to the law enforcement and safety professionals. I'll be the first person to tell you I'm not a safety professional, but I'll also be the first person to tell you if Chief Pice tells me you need to do this, we're going to do this, because they are. And we'll continue to work with them. They'll do assessments with us. They do our training and professional development. And the gentleman standing over there, Mr. Collier, who's our district safety coordinator, retired Dublin police officer, former SRO, is an incredible ambassador and coordinator for us. And at all times, he has a radio, and our police are awesome. He's got a radio that's a police radio. And he's awesome. So thank you, Chuck, for everything that you do. And then finally, we can clap for Chuck. I'm good with that. Finally, I'll be recommending a change. We used to have to print handbooks, and we couldn't change them on the fly, but now that we don't print handbooks anymore and they're online, we can change them on the fly. Mrs. Schwanke and I met with all of our principals on Wednesday last week in groups. And our middle school principals asked us, can we change our handbooks? Because right now our handbooks say that students can have cell phones out at passing time and during lunch. And in 2 of our buildings, principals have said no cell phones during passing time and lunch. And surprisingly, the kids lived. And we always say that teachers can say no cell phones in classrooms. So I would like to make a proposal to change the handbooks, and that'll be coming to you at a coming meeting. That would remove the carte blanche. Students can have their cell phones out during lunch, and allow building principals to work with their teachers and their parents to say that cell phones can only be out when given permission by a teacher or an administrator. So there's a growing push, and there's growing research that the proliferation and the time our kids spend on devices isn't good for them socially, emotionally, mentally, doesn't help them educationally. We're going to work through this as a community. It's going to be, there was a period of change where it just became an expectation. And I think as moms and dads and as educators, the conversation and the tide may be starting to shift a little bit back the other way. Not sure where it's going to land, not sure where it's going to go, but I would like to be able to give our principals that opportunity. I know that at Grizel Middle School, they just ignored the handbook, and Andy said they were able to survive without cell phones being out at lunch at Grizel this year. So just like to be able to match those things. Any questions on any of those issues? I didn't realize this report was this long. Parent Diversity Committee, posted in board docs for the board, and the board has received it, but for the community to see, is the final report from the Parent Diversity Committee. One of the strongest recommendations from the Parent Diversity Committee is that Dublin City Schools mirror what the City of Dublin has. Mason City Schools has a similar council to form a diversity council. There was also a general consensus that we provide services to meet students' needs where students are, and that our primary responsibility with such a diverse student base is to make sure that buildings and teachers and principals have the resources they need to meet kids where they are. There are a lot of areas of disagreement, but we started to get some trust and some understanding in the group. Maybe not from everybody in the group, but the last meeting had a different feel to it. So if the next steps are to look at forming a council, my recommendation would be that we take the parent representatives on that council would be from the committee that's already started to build trust. We would need some teachers and staff members on a council and some students on a council. So I think that's the next steps, is to, in the fall, we don't need to wait for a strategic vision. We don't need to wait a year to get that Dublin Diversity Council that had representatives from that committee, from the teacher ranks, administrative ranks, and student ranks. And talking with Dana McDaniel, the city is happy to share with us, to partner with us, and to help us get things going to be as productive as what's going on right now at the City of Dublin. Mrs. Gillis, Mrs. Rigby, did I miss anything from the committee? Did you kind of get the same sense that we didn't agree, but there's a little bit more understanding at those last meetings?
Yeah, I would say that the last meeting was a completely different feel. Trust has been built, and I think it's a very good call to utilize the same individuals that joined us on that committee, so we can continue to move forward with trusted, open dialogue to keep rolling this ball.
I agree. I think it can be uncomfortable to really, kind of bare your soul and say how you feel about something. And in that environment, what I was most encouraged by is the progress, I think, that we made over the 4 meetings, and how even though the content didn't get any less difficult, the conversations were passionate but respectful, and I thought they were very honest. And to just be able to sit there and watch that happen, I took something from it. I definitely hope that we can continue in that spirit, because I think it's going to be very effective.
And we've asked members of that committee if you'd like to continue, and I think we had 6 or 8 of them say, yes, we would like to continue as part of a bigger council. So I'll get with the 2 of you to make sure we've got the right people, to make sure that we do have, I I hate to use the term, but both sides represented, and all voices heard in bringing a council together. And then,
I have a question.
shoot.
I feel like I always have a question that I drop in at the last second. Do we have an idea of how big this council might be?
I think we'll probably be in the 20-person ballpark if we get 6 to 8 parents. I would just ask Donna to have our diversity teacher group. We have diversity teacher leaders who are working in that space they're a natural forward there. And then we have a couple students right now who are serving on the city's committee. It would be interesting for them to cross to be kind of our conduit to the city. And then we would look for a couple principals to be part of that. So I think if you get much more than 2024, you can't have conversations. And one of the things that we learned pretty quickly when we got together, at least our group didn't like to break into groups because they didn't feel like everyone was being heard. So I don't think you want to get too big that you have to break into groups to have conversations, because with a topic like this, I think it's important that everyone hears everyone's perspective. That's a really long answer to a simple question. I could have just said 20.
That was good. That was good.
Okay. And then finally, a fun slide. A couple huge thank yous. First year in 2 years, we did graduation at the Schottenstein Center, like we've always done graduation at the Schottenstein Center. And thank you to our high school administrators, those building and guidance secretaries who are really the ones who make it work, and to our counselors who make it work. To be there, and Scott and I and Brian and Jen spent the whole day to watch the transitions, to make sure every diploma is stacked in the right order on the tables and moved in that chaos between the end of one graduation and the beginning of the next, as performers are practicing and singers are singing and speakers are practicing, our teams were just calm. And it was great to have everybody back together. It was great to run, tiring, but great to run 3 graduations in one day. But for those young people who were able to walk across that stage and get their diploma, it was a great day, and it was thanks to the hard work of those high school teams. So I need to thank them. Thanks to Mr. Boney and our HR team. Most of our hiring's done, and it was complicated this year as we pushed 2024 virtual academy teachers back into traditional classroom spaces where they were open, not pushed, but filled those different roles. And as always, Mr. Boney and his team have been exceptional. We have some changes in our HR team as we have some of our folks moving on to be directors in other districts. So we're thank you to everything that he does to get our hires done at this time. I don't know if Keyburn and Tanya left, but Eric, thank you. Our communications team went with a couple of our students from the Student Advisory Committee on the honor flight last Thursday. Left at 5:30 in the morning, got back at like 11 at night. It was a Dublin honor flight. In addition to our team, Washington Township had a bunch of folks who went, and what a great experience. Dodgeball ended up, when it was all said and done, raising like $45,000. That helped fund part of the honor flight. But Eric, thank you to you and your team for making that all happen. Mr. Stark, you will all see in about probably 15 minutes more recommendations than the guys had in the last 12 months. We've got a lot of work going into the summer. We've got food service contract. Jeff's got a lot of balls in the air right now, and thank you for everything that you and your team does. And then finally, our central office team has been doing R-Factor training with leadership teams, and I know Mike Ulring and Chris and Tanya Bailey and our team has been training and training and training and it's fun to watch. And thank you for your additional time to fit that into your schedule. We've got a lot going on now during the summer. People are like, hey, are you enjoying summer? It doesn't seem like summer, but we're getting an awful lot of good things done as we get ready for the 22-23 school year. Any other questions, comments from board members?
All right, thank you for the update. Several updates. Okay, the proposed policies, the first reading, they are listed on the agenda. So again, if there are follow-up questions, please provide them back to Dr. Marshausen and the policy committee. So we do have one resolution that is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the attached resolution adopting high school girls and boys bowling as a OHSAA sanctioned sport. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right, questions or comments? All right, please call the roll.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis?
Yes.
And Mr. Melody?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. All right, we'll turn it over to Mr. Kern for treasurer updates.
Yes. This evening there's a few things on the item. I just do want to remind the board, our big, like Mr. Stark has this evening, we will have quite a few things on the next agenda, on which will, by the way, be June 29th is the meeting, which is a Wednesday. And thank you for your flexibility in moving that, as I know we typically have stuff on Mondays, but this allows us to complete our year-end and our statutory approvals that we have to have and then turn in to the county auditor by June 30th, so we appreciate that. That will be at Jerome, and we will have the ribbon cutting ceremony first. Groundbreaking. I'm sorry. Ribbon cutting. Sorry. Groundbreaking first, and then we'll move into the meeting after that. So, just a reminder. You know. But I just want to make sure we have at least 3 people there, so we can always do my approvals before we can go in there. So. So I appreciate that flexibility. But this evening, we just have a few things. We have some appropriation changes. We have Mrs. De Silva mentioned DEF meeting is this evening. We have some more local teacher grants that came in during the spring. So those appropriations we had to include to make sure that stuff was spent. As I know, teachers started working at the end of the year to get all that stuff and to implement it as we move into next school year. And then thanks to Mr. Collier, again, we got our safety grant from the Ohio Facilities Commission. He can go over, if you have any individual questions on what we're going to use that stuff for, either get hold of myself or Mr. Collier, and he can kind of explain what we're doing with those monies. Student Activity Purpose Clause, we have Kaufman class of 2026. As we're moving into the next school year and the class funds, you should see Jerome and Sciotos coming up here pretty soon. And you got the Jerome's Future Business Leaders of America. For our new board members, this is something you would have seen, probably this is the 3rd year of it, is our baseball and softball, and this list is just baseball maintenance workers. We do have funds that were set up by my predecessor for rental revenues to be able to collect rental revenues over the summer, as we have many, many games. As you've been probably by our 3 high schools, you've probably seen stuff on the weekends already at our baseball fields, where we have rentals throughout the summer and even into fall for fall ball. And what we do is have those funds and maintain the rental revenue, but also most of the list that you'll see is our head coaches at the baseball and some of their assistants. And they will, for each and before, during, and after each other game, either they're lining the fields, they're dragging the fields, they're kind of the liaison working with the different teams and the different groups and different other things that go on, and every area, managing umpires and everything else that's going on during that time frame. So, the $40, $42 per game, they can at most have 1 or 2 people on there at a time. So Just to let you know, our per game rental rate is $150. So what they can do with those funds that are set aside is, with the profits with that, every year they take to look at different, the betterment of the baseball teams or softball teams in this case. And they have, for example, maybe new fencing, new windscreens, whatever it may be out there, dugout improvements or whatever it may be. So a lot going on. And just to say, our grounds crew is already packed as it is with different things throughout the district, so that's why these individuals will be helping out doing that. So, plus they take great pride in their fields, and they don't want anybody really touching them anyways. So for you, Mr. Valentine, you're a baseball background, you can probably attest to that. And there's a bunch of donations and from our PTOs and stuff and our boosters that we always appreciate. Any questions this evening?
All right, if there are no questions, it is recommended by the treasurer that the Board of Education approve item 7B, approval of the appropriation changes, 7C, approval of the student activity purpose clause, 7D, approval of the baseball maintenance workers, and 7E, approval of the donations to the Dublin City Schools. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, questions or comments? Okay, please call the roll.
Mrs. Ruby?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
And Mr. Melody?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Okay, Deputy Superintendent comments. Ms. Schwanke.
Okay, on the agenda tonight for your approval will be the graded courses of study for actually multiple curricular areas and the approval of the Word Study 95 Phonics Core program. And upon your approval, I know Shannon Hunt-Stokey has a training plan ready to go. So we have a plan that will take us through fall as we train our teachers on that 95 Phonics Core program. That's it.
Okay, if there are no questions, item 9C, it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve 9A, approval of the graded course of study, 9B, approval of the English language
Actually,
arts.
do you have questions?
Okay.
Since we've had questions about this, can you speak to, I guess you, the implementation of the resources and how it fits with the curriculum, the ELA curriculum?
Are you talking specifically about 95 core
95,
phonics?
yeah.
It's a heavy, heavy lift to train so many elementary teachers in a program like this, especially because we do as a district believe in differentiation, and we do have a lot of highly trained teachers who will need to first get to know their students and get to know what sort of reading support they need. So the training will take place utilizing our coaches. We have instructional coaches, teaching and learning coaches, and it will also be led by 2 teachers on special assignment, Courtney Ingram and Kelly Sabo, who have been hired to help lead this work. If you want specifics about dates and times and how that will look, I will ask Shannon to come to the podium.
No, I don't need dates.
Okay.
Just thinking more of the process.
Yes. The process, I know, Shannon, I've seen your calendar, and Lori, I know you're a big part of that too, but it's the training begins with principals, and then we need to get our coaches tooled up, and then we go to the classroom level. Anything you'd like to add?
Initial training will be provided by Core 95 for our staff. Ongoing support by our coaching team and HOSAs.
Yep. And then I do have a question, Lori, this one might be for you. On the women's studies course, can you just explain, or Mrs.
I'll give it a whirl, and if I mess it up, you come on over here and fix it. Yes, based on feedback from our last board meeting, when we got some really good questions about the language describing the course, Lori and Shannon got the original committee together, the teachers that actually did the research in developing the course. We discussed the questions that were brought up at this meeting. And again, our intent was to clarify the language used with the intent of the course and the outcomes, the learning objectives we wanted. And so we really came to a good place there, and we feel like the course description now describes in a way that's very clear and articulates the intent of the course. So that the course itself did not change, but how we described the course did. Anything else? No?
I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
So since the language changed, you said the content has not changed. Is that correct or an incorrect assumption?
The course description, we needed to do a better job explaining the course. And Lori, I don't know, I don't want to speak for you. You could go there or here, yeah. Lori led this work, so she was in the room. So did you.
So curriculum development is kind of a tricky thing because there's a lot of research that goes into what the outcomes are for students. And I think at the last, just to take us back, some of the questions that arose were around that fourth wave of feminism, which is currently the wave with which you're in. As time goes on, we'll see the language in all of the resources start to solidify around what really defines that wave. But as we continued our research and in talking with the team and Shannon and the teachers who were originally were all in that room, we recognize that that wave can have lots of different descriptions across various resources because it's not yet history that's been defined, it's current. So, based on the feedback of the board, we looked at it and we revised the language to make sure that we were being inclusive and supportive of all learners who will come into that classroom. And students will probably run into some of the same things that we did in our research, which is as they look at various resources that exist around that wave of feminism, they're also going to probably ask some questions. So we're going to want to train our teachers. They're already starting. Now that we've identified who will be teaching these courses, they've already started their professional development this summer to start to think about how they can deal with some of those potentially controversial topics that could come up. That piece of the curriculum, although it was lengthy in words, is short in the scope of the semester elective course. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I'm going to ask you a very specific question because I'm going to get this specific question. I have gotten it.
Okay.
So one of the words that was removed from the content statement was LGBTQ+.
Correct.
So will that be, I'm assuming that has to do with LGBTQ rights.
Yes.
Or something along those lines. Would that not be in the course? Would that not be allowed in the course? Would that be something that might be added to the course?
Okay. I'm going to do my best to answer it very articulately in a way that also honors the fact that this is a high school elective course and student conversation can't be predicted behind this podium. And our teachers are masterful at answering questions and going to primary resources to help our students grapple with really complex topics. What we believe is the initial language was narrow in its scope. When you look at that wave of feminism, it really is the first step of feminism reaching beyond women, where women have gained ground in that area and now are stepping outside of that group to look for similar rights for others. We've seen this in history with the civil rights movement, and we don't get to sit here and decide when movements end and begin. Others' history defines that for us. So I can't sit here and predict down the road what that women's studies course will look like, but I can tell you that the waves of feminism in their true piece will be explored as a foundation for what women's studies is, and the hope is that in this course, students will bring the issues that they want to explore deeper into that coursework so that we can really honor some voice and agency of our high school really smart kids who bring those topics and do the research themselves. So can I stand here and say, no, those topics will not come up in the class? I don't think that's the reality. But I do think instead of it being teacher-directed, we'll allow a broader language so that those students can bring issues to the forefront.
Great, yeah, I think that makes sense. So the intent is to keep it open.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily to exclude anything. It's
Absolutely.
Actually to do the opposite.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
Just, Lori, I'm sorry. I'm just going to add, just because I feel like it was, largely my objection, I guess, that I raised at the last meeting. And my intent was not to not include a specific group. I objected to the language the way it was written because I felt it was persuasive and tended to side on a certain, whether it was a political topic or whether it was the content within. And, the reason I objected more so was because any class, whether it's an elective or not, should be one where students are forming their own opinions.
Absolutely.
And certainly with women's studies or any other course, it should be that avenue to explore different sides, different perspectives, have those conversations, and, reach a conclusion on their own.
Absolutely.
So I just want to make that clear because I feel like maybe, it's being misconstrued what my intent was, and my intent is just to have a balanced class and one in which the students think for themselves.
Thank you for that. I think it's important that people who have questions about this understand that we had a fabulous conversation and follow-up. The questions asked are good questions, and answering those questions, the curriculum team was able to dive a little deeper, reflect a little bit on why and what language they wanted to choose. And I can stand here and in 100% certainty tell you I believe we landed in a place that is balanced, that provides the learning opportunity that we want, that is reflective of the conversations that we've had. And I hope that the board feels the same way about that, because I can speak for that teacher team that they feel that their voice was heard, and that they landed in a better spot than maybe they had started. And so I think that's important to articulate for the board.
Thank you for getting up there and answering the questions, and thank you for discussing this with each other, because I think it's important that our community understands how we land on these descriptions and the curriculum. So I know I might have put you on the spot up there, but I think it's
That's why I
important
came
to talk
tonight,
about,
just in case.
Yeah, it's important to talk about why the changes are made. And honestly, I don't disagree with your objection to the initial first sentence. It was biased, but I just wanted to make sure people are clear that, and I'm not talking about I think it's clear that the LGBTQ plus statement is not in there, but it's not that it's going to be excluded. That's kind of one of the things I wanted to point out to people, or at least clarify. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just for the board's knowledge, and thank you to Scott Gill and his quick use of a computer, we have 15 students signed up at Kaufman for the class right now, 36 at Jerome and 27 at Scioto. And of those students, 2 are males. So 15, 36, and 27, 2 are males and the rest are females. Just so that's who signed up for a first-year course.
And Mrs. Rigby, I actually really appreciated your questions. I know Lori will agree, because it allowed us time to pause, think, and really clarify not only that language, but the intent of the course. So questions are always welcome.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for the additional discussion and comments. So with that said, we will try item 9C again. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve 9A, approval of the graded course of study, and 9B, approval of the English language arts. work study, 95 phonics core program. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, additional questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis?
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby?
Yes.
And Mr. Melody?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Okay, Chief Operating Officer comments?
Good evening, everybody. We've got a large agenda here, so I'll just walk through this methodically as I can. We do have a video in the middle of all this to break it up. This isn't as exciting as the 5-year forecast, but I think you'll find this interesting. The first few items that I have for approval is design contracts. And what that is we start working on our 2023 PI projects a year in advance. And earlier this year, we did what's required by ORC. It's a procurement process called Request for Qualifications, and that's how we procure designers. And designing is the first step before we bid this to make sure what we're bidding is correct. It's designed to save us money and be more efficient. Again, the designers aren't the ones selling it to us, they're the ones, it's independent. So the first request we have tonight is looking to contract with Kramer Engineers. And what they'll be doing is designing all of our asphalt improvement projects for next year. And this is replacing the entire Glacier Ridge and Daniel Wright parking lots. And in addition to that, Scioto, Emerald Campus, Deer Run, Indian Run, Old Sawmill, and Thomas will all get repair, crack, seal, and striped. And they will do that design. And a lot of the design with asphalt goes for civil engineering and ponding and water and how deep do you go when you replace everything. They'll do that, all the bid documents and construction administration, and their contract is for $89,800. And please keep in mind, after the designs are done, we'll be coming back to the board later this fall after the public bids are done to award a contractor to get the work done. The second item up for agenda is another PI project, and this one is this one deals with our building envelope. So this is metal roof repairs at Davis, metal panel installation at Deer Run, the gym roof replacement at Wyandotte, and more paneling replacement at Wright. And we're recommending Mays Consulting to do all this design, bid preparation, and subsequent project administration for $133,500. And the last design project we're looking for tonight is for electrical improvements. And this one, we're looking to contract with Advanced Engineering Consultants. And I do want to keep in mind that you'll notice that we don't pick the same architect over and over again. You'll find many districts will find their own architect. We like to have a stable of many different architects. That's the whole purpose of the RFQ. It also allows us to start looking for people who are niche in that category. So someone who knows roofing or knows electrical. And it allows us to have this large stable of people, and it really makes it more competitive that way as well. So for advanced engineering, this project next year is we're going to be bidding out later this year a generator replacement at Kaufman, Davis, Chapman, Thomas, and the preschool. And these are all generators that deal with life safety when the power goes out, and they also keep our internet up. And the places that I named, those generators are now past the point of any repair, so we're looking to replace. So we're looking for advanced engineering for $107,900. The next item for your approval is about playgrounds. So a playground is not a permanent improvement. It is, so instead of getting a designer and a public bid, we did an RFP. And Mrs. Schwanke may help me with this if I have any of this incorrectly. We're teaching Ms. Schwanke all the different terminology here. This is an RFP, which is a request for proposal. What this is we go for at least 3 or more, and we find out, in this case, what it would cost to design and install a playground. This was a real collaborative process. Ms. Schwanke was involved. We had, I think, 4 or 5 elementary principals involved with the interviews because we wanted to make sure that the design consultants were putting a design that they liked. And what we did earlier, actually late last year, is we had the principals rank what they thought playgrounds needed to replace in order. And then operations rank them by what we saw, because we get the playgrounds professionally inspected every year to make sure that they're safe for children. So we put together our own list. And it was nice that the 2 matched, that Bailey and Old Sawmill were both on the top 2. So those will be the first 2 that we replace. These replacements will be done next year. We're looking to award playground equipment services for for a not-to-exceed amount of $250,000 for both playgrounds. The next item is, and there's a video attached for this one, so we'll play the video and I'll talk a little bit. This is our bond project for Kaufman. So at Kaufman, over the next 2.5 years, we're going to replace the entire outside of the building scope. Here we go. There we go. Now, it has a lot of parking lot in the first part of this, but, that's just, we'll get past the parking lot and onto the building. But what you'll see is you'll see the new paneling color. Right now, it has a light tan, and the new paneling color that's going to cover the entire building is this dark bronze. It's the same color that we used at Hopewell and at Depp. You'll also notice that we're building it an entrance. A lot of people can't distinguish where to go with Kaufman, and this will have a new entrance. As part of this, we're going to be redoing the main entrance and the student entrance, and we're going to be messing with the sign. We're going to be changing the sign. There's a current sign at Kaufman. We're going to be moving the main sign down the road so people understand this is where the entrance is. But here you can see in the background the paneling, what the entrance will look like. So as part of this project, this year we're going to do all the masonry work. That's tuck pointing, replacing brick. And then next year, they're going to be doing all of the paneling and the windows for the building. So here, this part is going to show the student entrance. That was just the main entrance. This will be the student entrance. And again, please take note of the paneling. It's all different colors now. And the new paneling is not only a cosmetic upgrade. This new paneling will seal up the entire building, because right now that paneling, much of it is from 1972, and a lot of water gets in and a lot of heat and air escape out. And this new paneling will actually attach to the existing paneling and seal all of that up. So it will not only freshen up the building, but make it watertight and more energy efficient. This project will also replace 2 roofs over at Kaufman as well. So it's a major, major project. We estimate this project costs between $13 and $14 million right now. And typically, I would give you more of an exact forecast for that. And we're working with Robertson Construction on this. And a member of Robertson is here today. Robertson, by the way, is a new vendor with Dublin. They recently completed the Kaufman visitor bleachers. And you see they've done a nice job on that one. And they completed that 2 months ahead of schedule and on budget. And they're currently also now replacing the Davis Middle School bleachers interior. So we're working with them on this project, and this is an environment we've never seen before. And I've been doing this for close to 30 years, and I've never seen it. I'm between logistics problems and the port being, we can't get anything out of the port. There's a truck driver shortage. There's inflationary problems and gas, and gas doesn't just go to transportation. Fuel costs are involved with everything. It's very difficult. So the GMP we're asking you to approve tonight, now even though this is a $13 to $14 million project, is for $416,000. And that's because this is the work they'll start this year. And the only thing they'll be doing this year is all the brick work. We're going to be coming back to the board in September for the rest of the balance of this. And that one will be a large GMP. That'll be closer to a $12 or $13 million GMP. And that's going to be for to order all the windows and all the siding and the roofing material. And that part of the project will begin next May. So we'll order it now, we'll secure it now, then it'll get shipped then. So this is a real exciting project. It has taken quite a while to get going just because there's a lot of complications, a lot of engineering work that was brought into this to how best to attach things, what needs to be done first, what goes second. So this is a lot of nice work here. And I do want to thank, on all of this here, we have you can't put an agenda together like this without a good team. And Kevin Klingler, Shalina McConnell, later on we're going to talk about Brian Killian stuff in here. We have blessed to have a really good operations team. So that's for the GMP number 1. Next item is resolution for transportation software. This is what I want to talk about with Brian Killian. So a few years back, our transportation team worked competitively to find a software that's good for routing. What's our most efficient way to route? And we found something that works well. It works well with our systems here at central office as far as student data. That same company, Tyler Technology, came out with kind of an enhanced system. And Brian Killian, to his credit, really grabbed onto this, really researched it. And it's web-based. It's going to allow us to save money in our outsourced data center. It's going to allow it to where we can access it anywhere we need to. It has a lot more dynamic mapping software. It integrates live weather. And another thing that it does, and this is something that's really remarkable, is later on this year, as part of our PI spend, we're going to be recommending to buy these tablets for all of our buses. So the ODE is very specific on what's allowed on a bus and where. Even where the fire extinguisher goes, it's very prescriptive. They have allowed these type of tablets. And with this software, Right now, if a bus driver has a new route, they have to come back to Shire Rings, they have to pick up the route on paper, and then when they're trying to find it, if it's a substitute driver, they're driving with kids and they're checking out their maps like we used to do years and years ago. This software will work with the tablets that'll instantly download a new route, and it'll bring up a GPS map just like you have in your vehicle. And it'll give us also a live GPS. So right now we have a passive GPS and a radio system. Passive GPS meaning with the cameras we have on board, we can find at the end of the day where things are. But with a live GPS, we'll be able to respond quicker to needs from a district, or if God forbid there's an emergency, we'll know where everyone is at and what to do. So this new software there's an agreement to be signed. It's a 3-year agreement, and over the entire 3 years, it's $73,000. And we're looking for that resolution tonight as well. The next item is an approval for our food service agreement. This is a big deal. This is the first time Dublin has changed food service providers in 17 years. This is a process we started maybe 5 or 6 months ago. This is a heavily regulated procurement process because there's federal dollars in there. Very, very prescriptive. So we worked closely with our attorneys on this. But we did something different here, and we wanted this to be a very, very collaborative process. We just didn't want this to be just about operations. So we had a food taste session over at Scioto High School. Only parents and students were invited, and we had quite a bit of turnout, and they all would rank what they thought was the best food, this, that, and the other. We also met with our principals multiple times. We even gave our principals a survey to fill out, what they liked, what they didn't like, to see what they were going after. We worked heavily with Brian Kern and Tyson Hodges. The financial parts of this are very, very complicated because it's all based upon, there's incentive clauses in there, it's based upon how much they sell, things like that. So there's a lot of things that go into here. And it came out to be that Sodexo had the best value proposition, and they'll be replacing Chartwell. So this is a real big deal. Sodexo has already started this week. They're starting to interview at Scioto High School is where they set up shop for this. And with tonight's approval, we look to start them July 1st. And it will be a challenging transition that has to be done in 60 days to get school started. But I talked to actually their manager for their executive vice president for the East Coast, who has our account, and had a really good conversation with him today. And they're really up for the challenge. And when he told me all the different ideas they had for hiring and for management, we also talked to him about Chris. We talked to him about some of our ideas of maybe getting some of our students who are learning life skills to maybe work in their cafeteria. They're up for everything. So it was a really good conversation, and we're really looking forward to this rollout. Next item is our approval of our renewal of our district's property and liability insurance. So this is, we're asking, now this year's, it's for $713,000. It's about a 9% increase year over year, which is not that bad. When we work a lot with Gallagher, that's our insurance consultant, and it's really not that bad because, and this shouldn't surprise anyone, but property values have skyrocketed. They have skyrocketed over the last year, and we have a lot of property. So that alone is part of that increase. We do have a loss ratio that is close to 80–85%. A good loss ratio is basically 30 to 50%. That's how insurance companies make their money. Our loss ratio is decreasing the last 2 years, which is a great sign. That means behavior in the district has changed. We're really getting across. We're using more waivers. We're trying everything we can to lower our liability. So things are moving in the right direction. We plan on going back out to bid probably in a couple years. We just went out to bid about 2 years ago. One of the things in a property liability insurance market is you want to show some stability, and we also want to get some of our numbers down before we go back out. So working with Liberty Mutual Insurance, tonight we're asking for renewal of their policy, and in addition, the voluntary individual student accident insurance coverage. While that doesn't cost the district anything, we do have to offer that to any students who want that additional insurance. And we got the coverage basically recommended from Gallagher, and that's on their approval tonight as well. The next item is a resolution declaring impracticality of transportation. When it comes to transportation, there's 2 items that we have to determine whether we transport anyone, and the first is eligibility. Eligibility for private, and this is for private schools, obviously, not for our own schools, but if you're a private school and you're within a 30-minute drive, you're eligible for transportation. But now we have to see, are you practical? Practicality is it practical? Is it financially feasible for the district to transport those students to that private school? A few years back, we came up with an analysis that basically determined we need at least 20 students on that bus. And the analysis showed that when you get the 20 students, you get a comparable cost per student that we have to our own schools. We felt that was a fair number. We have twice been challenged on that over in the last 5 years, and these were formal challenges that went to ODE. And in both instances, ODE supported the district. They were impressed by our analysis. It made sense to them, and it's really created a nice precedent for us to have this 20 students. Tonight, we're recommending impracticality for the school listed, because they only have one pupil that's going to be transported there. Next one is an annual approval of resolution for our Dublin. We partner with the City of Dublin every year for camp, and it's really, these contracts they don't cost us any money, it brings money in. They're more about liability between us and the city. And there's going to be 3 contracts, one's for food, one's for the facilities, and one's for transportation. So this resolution is just to get all those signed up and done, and that's really just a matter of our legal working with the city's legal each year just to make sure things line up. And the last one is kind of exciting. It's an approval for a resolution to authorize us to go into a purchase contract to purchase approximately 65 acres of land in the northwest quadrant of the district. This purchase contract would put us in contract. The contract is contingent upon clear title and environmental due diligence. And the environmental due diligence includes things like a phase 1, that's all about environmental, was there any oil on the land, things of that nature, wetlands, endangered species, and a historical review. And we're also doing a site feasibility study. Now, while that's not contingent, it does tell us a little bit about the site, electrical, water, sewage, a little bit more about the wetlands, that type of thing. And so this authorization gives us, we have 60 days with an option to go 30 days more if need be to get this due diligence done. And if the due diligence works out, then we'll proceed with the resolution gives the superintendent, the treasurer, or the board president the ability to sign up. Once they sign this agreement, if our due diligence checks out, then the district will own that land. And see, that was pretty quick. Is there any questions?
I'd like to thank Jeff. We talked a little bit ago in executive session about land acquisition, and it's been a lot of conversations and a lot of parcels, but this is a fabulous price that gives us a lot of flexibility as we don't have plans for today, but as we know as a community, we had the land that Hopewell was built on for 30 years before we needed to build on it. But when you have it, it allows decisions to be made in due time. So thank you, Jeff, for working through this process so diligently.
All right, so if there are no questions, we will cover item 11L. So bear with me here for a minute. 11A, approval. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve 11A, approval of the resolution for the 2023 asphalt improvement project. 11B, approval of the resolution for the 2023 building envelope improvements. 11C, approval of the resolution for the 2023 electrical improvements project. 11D, approval of the resolution for the playground replacements at Bailey Elementary and Old Sawmill Elementary. 11E, approval of the resolution for the guaranteed maximum price, GMP number 1. 11F, approval of the resolution for the transportation services software. 11G, approval of the resolution for the food service agreement. 11H, approval of the renewal of the district's property and liability coverage and student accident insurance. 11I, approval of the resolution declaring the impracticality of transportation. 11J, approval of the resolution with the City of Dublin for the 2022 summer camps. And 11K, the approval of the resolution authorizing the execution of a real estate purchase. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Are there questions or comments?
Thank you, Jeff, and your team.
Agreed. Thank you. This will put us in a good position going forward for flexible needs. All right, so no other comments. We have a first and a second. Please call the roll for approval.
Mrs. Rigby,
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mr. Valentine,
Yes.
and Mr. Melody.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Now, no rest, Jeff. Get back to work. Yes. All right, so Executive Director. Executive Director of Human Resources.
Good evening, Dr. Marchhausen, Treasurer Kern, members of the board. I'll start with our certified agenda for HR. Dr. Marchhausen mentioned earlier, you'll find an administrator salary change. Christy Venny is a recommendation for her to move from the role of coordinator of K-12 career education to interim director of community engagement, planning, and partnerships. You'll also see 6 certified resignations, and then we have 14 new hires. And as Dr. Marchhausen said, we're getting very close to having our new hires complete. We have 2 certified substitutes on this agenda who will be working in our student support services area. And then there's several summer school recommendations for employment, assessment, and then special ed programming. The attachments in the certified section are just final sports contract recommendations. Moving on to the classified agenda, you'll find 8 resignations and 2 retirements. The retirements are Rebecca Berthwick. She'll be retiring as a bus driver in our district with 15 years here. And then Diane Zimmerman will be retiring from Sells Middle School as an admin secretary with 22 years. There are 15 new employees being recommended in our classified area, and then several summer school employment requests, summer school support, and then several salary changes as well. The last item on is a job description for the position of technical support specialist that's on for your review and approval. And then moving on to stipends, you'll find an extended summer learning stipend, a reading recovery teacher leader training, several 6th grade orientation stipends, and then Davis's upcoming 8th grade DC trip for October on for your approval. Any questions for the HR area?
Okay, thank you for the update. All right, 13D, it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve 13A, approval of the personnel action items classified. 13B, approval of the personnel action items classified. The first one was certified. 13C, the approval of the stipend requests. Is there a motion to approve item 11D?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Rigby,
Yes.
Mr. Valentine,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis,
Yes.
and Mr. Melody.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Okay, Public Information Officer comments.
Good evening again, everyone. Dr. Marchhausen stole my thunder on the 2 things that I wanted to speak on tonight, but I brought pictures, so I got that going for me. That's true, that's true. Wanted to again echo his comments on graduation. It was great to see. I think the final number I had was 1,279 of our graduates of the class of 2022. Great to see all of those students and looking forward to what that class brings to our community moving forward. The second thing I wanted to highlight was the honor flight that our district dodgeball tournament went towards. We raised, once we got all the numbers came in, it was like $43,319, I think. So a huge thanks to our community on those efforts. And so all those funds went to Honor Flight Columbus to help fund Honor Flight Mission 115. And that was last Thursday. We flew out. I think the flight was at 7:30, but we were at the airport by 6. We saw Iwo Jima, Arlington National Cemetery, World War II Memorial, Vietnam, Korea, Navy, Air Force, in the Women's Memorial. So it was a fantastic day from start to finish. You'll see in these pictures, you'll recognize two faces that we saw previously tonight with Miss Bonnie Gameri and Mr. John Witt. They were able to join us on the flight, as well as Mr. Michael Blake, assistant principal at Carr. Keyburn Grady was a guardian as well. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see two of our, I keep wanting to call them students, or our recent graduates. They're two members of Dr. Marshausen's Student Advisory Committee that just graduated one from Scioto and one from Kaufman this year. And so it was just a fantastic day. In talking among all of us, it was just such a meaningful day. Probably the most moving part was when we came back to John Glenn. It had been a long day, and there were hundreds of people in John Glenn with signs, clapping. There were bagpipes, welcoming these veterans home in a welcome home that they didn't receive when they came back from whatever war they were fighting in. So that was probably the most moving part. And so it was great for all of us to see the hard work of our community go towards such a rewarding event. Any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, items for board discussion or future agenda items?
I have something. So this, well, yesterday actually, I was able to attend the Dublin Pride Walk. I know Lindsay wanted to, but she was trapped on an airplane, so she didn't get to make it. But yesterday, there was the Dublin City Manager, the Dublin Mayor, and Chief Pice was there, and they all spoke about the inclusion work that they're doing in the city, and I think that it would have been awesome if we had official representation. You know, we were going to be there anyway, but I think going forward, it would be nice to have official representation at some of the community events or city events. The State of the City would have been another good one. I know that's probably on your radar now, but I think, yeah, you were there, but I didn't know anything about it. So, like, being a new board member, I think it would have been nice to have some kind of, I guess what I'm getting at is, like, if we had some kind of calendar that we could put together for the board members to be like, you know, this would be great for something for the board members to attend, so that we are kind of aware of things before, so we can plan ahead.
I will ask our team to put something together.
And I think that would be something that, you know, maybe Christy could help us with in the future, those kind of things. Just putting it out there. Thanks.
All right, great suggestion. We can have Christy and Eric work on that together. All right, any other board action items or future agenda items? All right, thank you. So do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.